Hey guys, I'm Hop, tfbtv's second biggest Glock fanatic, and I promise I'm not just saying that because James has my family and won't let them go. What you're looking at right now is the new Strike Industries Mass Driver, which is a blow-forward compensator for Glocks that doesn't require the use of a threaded barrel. Like everything Strike Industries makes, it's very cool, a little bit sci-fi, and surprisingly affordable. It's also a little bit insane. The Mass Driver is available for the Glock 17 or Glock 19 with different versions for Gen 3 or Gen 4 pistols. It comes with its own recoil spring and extended metal guide rod. The Mass Driver should be able to work with any slide that has the same front-end geometry as an OEM Glock slide. The design of the Mass Driver incorporates a secondary spring between the compensator itself and the end of the guide rod. The guide rod basically holds the slide and the compensator assembly together when locked. Then upon firing, the slide travels rearwards down the guide rod and the compensator travels forwards up the guide rod. A typical compensator attaches to the end of the barrel and redirects the expanding gas upwards into the sides to counteract recoil and stabilize the gun. The Mass Driver, however, is not attached to the barrel, it's attached to the guide rod. When you fire, the gas pressure pushes forwards on the Mass Driver, causing it to move forwards theoretically at the same time that the slide of the pistol is unlocking and moving to the rear. If high school physics taught me anything, it's that this should significantly reduce muzzle rise and felt recoil, quite a bit more so than a regular compensator. You might recognize this idea from the doodles in the margins of my 8th grade composition notebook, or maybe from the Russian AEK 971 rifle, which uses a forward-moving counterweight to balance out the recoil forces of the bolt carrier. There shouldn't be any issues with bullets striking the compensator, if that's what you're worried about. It is held flush against the front of the slide by spring pressure when the gun is in battery. A good rule of thumb at close range is that the bullet will already be in the target before the slide unlocks, so it should be just fine. I installed the Mass Driver on my Gen 3 Glock 19 for testing. I shot it side by side with a stock Gen 2 Glock 19 for comparison purposes, but a better comparison might actually be with a Glock 17. With the compensator installed, the G19 is actually a bit longer than a G17. If the Mass Driver equipped G19 isn't appreciably better than a stock G17, then it's probably not worthwhile, since the G17 also has a longer sighting plane. Well, let's get the big question out of the way first. Does it work? Alright, let's go Mass Driver mag dump on steel. That might actually be working. That's weird. Yes, it really does. Shooting a Glock with a Mass Driver is not like shooting with a ported barrel or a normal compensator. It feels very strange and it takes some getting used to, but it absolutely does tame muzzle rise. That feels weird as hell. The different recoil impulse caused me no end of trouble while I was testing the gun because I kept switching back and forth between the comped Glock and my stock G19 and G17s. Of course, the question is, can I shoot a Glock 17 that fast? I can, but I can tell there's definitely more muzzle flip to control. That is wild. Still don't think I like it very much, but it's super interesting. The Mass Driver equipped G19 exhibited less felt recoil and muzzle rise than a stock G19, stock G17, and even a G17 with a ported barrel. I put about 300 rounds of mostly Ventura 124 grain FMJ through the G19 with a Mass Driver on it. A big thank you to Ventura Munitions for sponsoring TFBTV and providing ammunition so we can do these reviews. We'd also like to thank Top Gun Supply for sponsoring TFBTV. If you need any kind of shooting supplies, check them out. When I installed the Mass Driver, I cranked down the hex nut on the front to German torque specs, and it didn't loosen up on me at all. I didn't have any reliability issues, but I think the Mass Driver did make the already erratic Gen 3 Glock ejection pattern even worse. Federal 9B PLE, 115 grain, plus P+. Let's see how that feels through the comp. Now, before you go run out and buy one of these, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, it isn't very practical. Finding the right holster for a Glock with a Mass Driver on it could prove to be a challenge. Open bottom holsters are not a great idea, since the Mass Driver has enough of a lip on it that the comp could catch on the bottom of the holster when drawing. And the shape and profile of the Mass Driver is unlike other compensators on the market. While shooting with the mass driver installed, I got a point of impact shift of about an inch high at 10 yards, shooting 124 grain standard pressure Ventura FMJ. 124 grain loads usually hit a bit higher than 115 grainers at short range, but that shift was compounded by the mass driver. It's not uncommon for compensators to change the point of impact. Without adjustable sights, the best option would be to switch from using a combat hold to using a 6 o'clock hold if you're shooting for groups. Though why you would do bullseye shooting with a compensator is beyond me.
This is without the mass driver installed, hitting a little bit high left. With the mass driver installed, quite a bit higher and more left. Just the difference in group tightness is just because these are my cold shots and then these are after I'd warmed up a little, so I was definitely shooting better here, but hitting a lot higher and left.
I initially thought the mass driver was causing my Gen 3 G19 to shoot to the right, and then on the next range trip to the left. The issue persisted after I removed the mass driver, and that's when I realized the front sight post had loosened up and was wandering back and forth. Oops. As long as my front sight was already loose, I decided to work some New York reload drills.
4.42.
Alright, that's enough screwing around for one day. The mass driver is a cyberpunk accessory for Reddit space gun posting. It looks like something out of the 2018 game Ruiner. I'm not convinced the mass driver is really all that useful, but it's a novel idea that performs as advertised, and I appreciate that Strike Industries is willing to throw science at the wall to see what sticks.
Alright, light off.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you like TFBTV and you would like to support us, you can support our sponsors. If you need ammunition, check out Ventura Munitions, and if you need pretty much any kind of range stuff, check out Top Gun Supply. We really appreciate their support, and they would appreciate yours. You can also support TFBTV directly by joining our Subscribestar or Patreon. Links to both of those are in the video description. Alright, catch you on the next one.